Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. Tonight we have my friend Mike Kennedy.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, who's running for Congress.
That's right.
Yeah, the only bad thing about that is we're going to miss you in the Senate.
I know it's been a privilege to be there with you.
Yeah, so let's talk. I want to start just talking about your background, because I think if people actually understand where you came from, I think it's really good for them to,
So my grandparents came from Canada as immigrants into Michigan. That's where I was born. My mom and dad met in Detroit, and my mom's she grew up in the Detroit area, and I was raised for much of my kind of young life. I was raised in Michigan, and so my dad's he became naturalized. One of the things that I remember is Ronald Reagan, if I recall that correctly. I was just a child, but my dad was naturalized at a service that Ronald Reagan conducted in Detroit. And I remember as a family, that was such a big deal. We all went down to some place, and Reagan was the one that conducted the ceremony. And I didn't really understand. I was too young to really understand what it meant to be naturalized. But I'm just really proud of the fact that my grandparents came here legally. My father obeyed the rules and ultimately became a naturalized citizen. And I'm privileged to be a first-generation American on my dad's side. And it's just been, America's a beacon of hope. It's such an inspiring thing. My mom and dad, there are 7 children in my family. I was number 2 of 7. And my mom and dad, when I was a young teen, they got divorced. So at that point, economically, Michigan was in a recession, and our family economically did really poorly in that case. I was a free lunch kid starting in 7th or 8th grade, and it was really challenging. We got church welfare, had to work for it at that point, and it was something that taught me early on is control your money or it will run you into the ground. So that's a fundamental part of my life. But I always loved to learn, loved to read books, and we went to church, and that was a big part of my life. Boy Scouts as well, and I followed the rules, stayed away from drugs and alcohol and all that terrible stuff. And I was an Eagle Scout. I was very proud of that. I love the Boy Scouts. It was a great experience for me, and subsequently got a scholarship to go to college. Loved learning, and ultimately decided to go to medical school, where that was a real challenge.
So you came to BYU?
BYU first to go to undergrad, yes. And that's my first entrance into Utah, besides going to the MTC in Provo for those few weeks. And
so where'd you go on a mission?
I went to Arizona.
Oh,
I was English-speaking Arizona. I drove a better car and ate better food while I was a missionary when I was there in Arizona than when I was at home. Life was kind of a struggle at home, but went on a mission. I graduated from Brigham Young University as an undergrad, and I went to Michigan State for medical school, and stayed in Michigan for my family doctor residency. That's a 3-year process, and during that process, I got the brainchild to go to law school. Told my wife,
is that a brainchild
or a harebrained scheme? One of the two. It's hard to say which, but I actually thought what I want to do here, because I was almost kind of completing my professional training and start with professional life. And I remember the night. It was an evening time. I thought I might want to go to law school, and I came to my wife at that time. I think we had 3 or 4 children, and we were just about to graduate into professional life and just have a nice life. And I said to my wife, I think I might want to go to law school. And she said, not with me. And I said, what? Really? I was shocked. I was like, she's doing all this stuff with me, having children and going through school. And then she said, no, just kidding. Yeah, if you feel like we should do that, let's do it. So that was a shocker. But that's the kind of amazing person I'm married to. Is she's willing to link arms with me and move forward on some really big challenges, including having 8 children, which that was a big deal. So we
not only 8 children, but you taught them at home, didn't you?
Oh, that's right, the Kennedy Academy, which we talked about this session. That was fun, and we made sure you got a degree from the Kennedy Academy as an honorary professor at the Kennedy Academy. So my wife and I have homeschooled our children for all these years, and so we went to law school after residency. I came back to BYU to go to Brigham Young University Law School, and so it took me 6 years to get a 3-year law degree, because I was working full-time as a family doctor while I was going to law school.
So is that when you started your own private practice?
Yes. So take that back. I started with the University of Utah. I worked with them for 13 years, and then joined a private practice where I still am in the private practice with partners at this point. So I'm a small business owner at this point. But going to law school with children, I think it was number 5, 6, then 7 through law school that we had children. We had a number 8 after that, and then graduated from law school in 2007, and decided in 2012 to run for the state house, and the political life kind of takes on from there. So, of course, I ran that race in 2018 for U.S. Senate against Mitt Romney. We were not successful, but it was a real privilege. We learned a ton.
I would say
by doing
you were
that.
quite successful when you think about. I mean, you beat Mitt Romney
in the convention. We did.
Convention.
We were proud of that fact. We worked really hard for that. In fact, this campaign for Congress, so as a congressional candidate, I'm starting this process, John, in a way that my opponents just they haven't run against Mitt Romney in a U.S. Senate race all over the state. So, I mean, there's distinctions that are happening. There's 10 of us in this race, and it's pretty clear at the outset that some of us know more about what we're doing with a federal campaign than others, and that's fine. I mean, my opponents will get better, and I appreciate where they're coming from. But it's been really inspiring to offer my services to people. It's been a pleasure to work with you in the Senate, and I'm offering my services in the federal seat, and we'll just see what the people have to say about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Your background in that. So what made you decide that politics was something you wanted to do?
Yeah, and you and I could talk about the same. We love policy, we love people, and I think you and I both, we love solving problems. And what grander problems can you confront than the ones that we see in Washington, D.C., with the international affairs that we're dealing with the border crisis that we have, with our mounting national debt that puts our whole country at risk? The problems are massive, but I believe that working together, if we take people that are smart and capable, we can dive in and actually make these things better, which is what I've done as a doctor. It's what I've tried to do as a husband and father, and it's what I would do in Washington, D.C. if they're willing to hire me to do that.
Yeah, that amazing background. One of the things about you too, Mike, is in the Senate, you've taken a leadership role on some pretty tough things.
That we have.
I mean, you think about it. One of the things I admire is that you're able to take on a tough issue, something that's politically divisive, but yet you garner a lot of respect on both sides of the aisle.
Well,
right?
What I love is I like to learn from other people that think differently than I do, and I'd like to try to build coalition and consensus when we can. And when we disagree and there's just no agreement, then you've seen it with not only my Democrat colleagues in the Senate, but also sometimes with my Republican colleagues, Senator, well, I won't even name senators, but
right.
You and I have seen debates and discussions where we can debate the issues without denigrating the personality, without challenging the motivations of the individual that's opposing whatever I'm proposing or whatever. And so in that collegiality, it's been a real privilege. The senators and the representatives are good people, and I think mostly have good intentions, as far as I can ever tell. And it's been a real privilege to learn from and work with them when I can, or disagree respectfully when we have to.
Okay, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And we'll come right back. Hey Siri, how do I get to the state capitol?
John, the fastest way to get to the Capitol is to make a lot of empty promises, to get help from special interest groups and endorsements from politicians. You will also need to buy a better suit.
That's not going to work for me, Siri. You need to find another way.
John, listen to me. If you're going to win your race, you will need to play the political game. You also need to use more hairspray and buy a golden retriever. Also, a new phone case would be nice.
It's enough of this.
John, are you there? Did you just leave me on the road? Fine. Keep your principles, John.
My name's John Johnson. I'm not running to be part of a system, and I don't owe anyone special favors. I'm running to listen to and work for you. I'm running to get results. Welcome back to PoliticIt. We've got Mike Kennedy today, Senator Mike Kennedy, running for Congress.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, so nice to have you here. So right before the break, we talked about kind of your legislative style a little bit, but one of the things I noticed about you is you're able to take on tough issues, but still remain respectful and caring about other people. Why don't you talk about a little bit some of the tough issues that you've taken on?
Yeah, you and I both know the world is a complicated place. There are infinite problems with very difficult resolution of those types of issues, and I love to try to solve problems. It's been part of my life since the very beginning. There are just lots of issues growing up poor with siblings and trying to figure out how do I make it in this complicated world. So one thing that I think is important is how we approach complicated issues. And actually the bill SB 16 that I worked with many others to pass in 2023 that still is yet to be enjoined. It's the ban on transgender surgeries on minors. That is a reflection of the way I approach things. So I was in 2022, I was asked to deal with that issue because they tried over and over again to do something about it. Each time it had failed. And so I was approached and just said, look, Senator Kennedy, you got to do something about this. And I said, really? You want me to do something about this? So I took that and countless hours thought about how do we work with these transgender youth, their parents, the doctors, and deal with that on a legislative level. It's really complicated because you have parents' rights. You have, of course, the child has some say in how things are going. And then you've also got the complexity of passing legislation to build a majority and a consensus and do that in a respectful way so that, and of course, we have the doctor-patient relationship, which as a doctor, I'm very sensitive to. And then how do you preserve and protect all of that at the same time, moving the ball forward? Because it's not healthy for normal children to have healthy body parts taken off and they're 13 to 15 to 17 years old. That is a change that's irrevocable once that happens. So over countless hours, I thought a lot, talked to a lot of different people, and we were able to craft a piece of legislation that was respectful of the community, but it was respectful of the fact that this could be litigated, but it also moved the ball forward, and that's what SB 16 turned into. It was a collaboration with many legislators, many different interest groups that were able to feed me information and allow me to work together with those people to craft a really good piece of legislation that actually did ban transgender surgeries on minors in the state. It also put a moratorium on new entrants into transgender cross-sex hormones as well as puberty blockers, which I had great concerns about that. But it left the population that was in the middle of that kind of care for specific reasons that are not worth discussing at this point, but it left those people that were in the middle of care alone. And meanwhile, we're gathering a systematic review of the evidence, which you're aware of how we did that. We need advice from people that know how things are going, and so we are gathering still that information so that we can, as a legislature, make good decisions about that complicated issue. And when it comes, John, to the border, as far as border protection,
go
ahead.
Let's talk about how does that transition into, say, the national debt, border security,
right,
other things.
So
how does that prepare you to solve these?
It's a great question, because I think to make decisions about complicated things, you need good information from people that understand how things are going, and that's the kind of legislator I am. As far as I gather information from reliable, reputable resources, I challenge information that's questionable, and then I start to figure out with that coalition of people that are invested in this, how do we make a difference in this area? And so, John, you and I both know the border is a crisis. It's a disaster what's happening at our border. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's a national security crisis. We have drug lords and cartels running our border that we aren't, even as a national government, in charge of. We have fentanyl pills coming across, sponsored by China. Fentanyl pills coming across our border that are killing our young people or addicting them to drugs that are going to devastate their lives and ruin everybody around them. And in addition to that, we also have the need for immigrants. So understand we need to secure our border, and that would be my first objective. We should secure our border. That's one of the fundamental roles of the national government. Secure our border, and then we need to improve our legal immigration system so that people like my grandparents and my father that want to come here and be honest, hardworking people to live the American dream that Ronald Reagan routinely talked about. This country is a beacon on the hill, and for us to have the opportunity to bring these people in a legal fashion, let them work here and go home if they want to, or even come here and contribute to our society. And if they want to follow the rules, then we are happy to have them here. We need them here. So there are ways to work on that, and actually passing that legislation is a reflection of how I work. I build coalitions and consensus. Complicated issues, I thoroughly think about these things and don't take steps until I know that we've got good policy opportunities in front of us. And one of the things about this race, there are 10 people in this race, in this congressional race. There's only 3 that have ever done any legislation, and I'm the only one that's passed any legislation for the past decade. So when it comes to passing legislation, I'm the one that's currently in the middle of working on that. You and I have worked together on many important pieces of legislation just this last session.
Yeah. So let's talk about national debt.
Yeah.
It's
a disaster. Yeah, I've similar sort of considerations. Is our national debt, I say, is our greatest national security threat that we confront. If we don't have money, we can't buy bullets, we can't buy tanks, we can't build the infrastructure that we need, and we continue to spend out of control our grandchildren's money, and our national debt continues to accrue interest at the rate that we can't even pay off the interest that we're supposed to pay. So when it comes to national debt,
yeah, I read a thing recently that said that the interest on the debt is now exceeding the amount we spend on national defense.
It's very disturbing to think about. And our children and grandchildren, if we don't get this resolved, they will curse our names under their breath for not handling this issue that is going to fall out of the sky on their heads when our economy collapses at some point because we've not dealt with this. So I'm deeply invested in that. But as a person that comes out of challenging financial circumstances as a child, the way to do that first is spend less than you earn. That's the first thing. We have to stop spending the way that we're spending. But there are ways when it comes to spending. The 3 primary drivers of our national debt, it's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Those 3 things, and as a doctor, I know Medicare. As a doctor, I know Medicaid. I know those systems. I know where the fraud is. I know where the abuse is. I know where we can make cuts and not change those systems for those that receive. We don't damage those that receive these benefits from the country in any way. And I've got a variety of ideas, but I could go into Washington, D.C. with those issues and build a coalition, work with people that are thoughtful, and actually help to improve those systems so we can save hundreds of millions of dollars without changing at all the benefits that people are receiving.
Huh. So let's go back to the border. I mean, I went down there with AFP, and I was shocked to find out that our border security is a system where they wait till people come across the border and then they process them.
It's a terrible idea.
Give them a plane ticket anywhere
and
they
want to go. And then they let them go.
And you know, there were lots of people that were lost in the Rio Grande, and they didn't drown. They were shot.
Wow.
And it was amazing to me. You had mentioned before that you felt like the cartels are running that. Well, it was pretty obvious that that's what was going on. How do we stop that?
Well, John, Donald Trump seemed to have that under pretty good control. So this is a creation of the Biden administration. They have encouraged these people to flow across our borders, and as soon as he was elected, people started moving from Central and South America. They started coming across these countries to come to the United States of America. So remain in Mexico, the president can do that tomorrow. Our current president could do remain in Mexico tomorrow. You will not step across our border until we have analyzed, vetted you, and you're doing that in Mexico, and we decide who's coming across. Donald Trump seemed to have this under great control. This is a presidential this is a failure of the Biden administration, and try to blame it on legislation. We do need legislation. I'm very supportive of proper legislation to secure our border and also enhance legal immigration. Going back to my family's foundation, we want those people to come here, but they need to come here legally. So when it comes to that, remain in Mexico is the first policy. And Biden could do that tomorrow. He just does not want to, and he's trying to blame it on Congress, but it is not Congress's fault. Donald Trump had that under control.
Yeah. So let's go to the debt now. What do you do there?
We improve Medicare and Medicaid, and then we have conversations associated with how do we work on this massive ball that is our debt and try to chip away at it. The reality behind an average person that buys a house if it's a 30-year mortgage, especially in the state of Utah, which is really expensive to buy a house in Utah, you're not going to pay that mortgage off in 5 years. You're not going to pay it off in 6 months. It's going to take a while. But if you've got the right behavior, you spend less than you earn, you continue to work hard and play by the rules, is you can pay off a 30-year mortgage. It's just going to take you a while. So I look at our national debt the way I'd look at my own personal finances. At some point, we just have to be realistic. We have a massive problem. We need to address it. First thing is we need to spend less than we earn, and part of that is we need to stop this spend like a drunken sailor federal approach to things. The difference between our federal government and the drunken sailors, at least the drunken sailor has the decency to spend his own money. It's disastrous to watch these lawmakers take money from our grandchildren and then just spend it on programs that are entirely not only worthless, but possibly even nefarious on some level. But the reality is we need to spend less than we earn. And as you and I have done in the state legislature, part of that is unleashing the potency of our citizens. We need to cut taxes. Oh, but then the tax receipts to the federal government will go down. Good, because then money is in people's pockets. They can invest that money and build our economy. And because government does not build the economy, government tends to get in the way of those that are building the economy. So cut our taxes, and as a result of that, we see tax receipts actually increase. We profit as a result. All of society profits when we reduce regulatory burdens and also cut taxes on people.
And growing the economy is probably the only way to really chip away at that national debt that we have.
And Americans, they are resourceful. Every problem we've confronted from World War II and so on, we have the capacity to solve these problems. It may take time and it may take coalition building, but we can do these things together. Part of it is just having good behaviors. And I just say the federal government's way overboard on its spending problems. And part of that is you give me an omnibus bill that I have 8 hours to read and it's 9,000 pages long, my vote is no. You give me a continuing resolution, I don't even have a chance to read it, my vote is no. I can't vote for things that I don't even have a chance to read, and then once I read it, I'll have to make a decision as to whether it's something I can support or not. But process, you and I both understand as state senators, process is part of it, and then the policy itself is part of it. Current process in Washington, D.C. with these self-created crises associated with government shutdowns, they create that problem themselves so that they can always have something to solve and ultimately prevent the government from shutting down when in fact they're the ones that created that problem in the first place. So we need to get back to budgeting and regular order. It's just we should pass budgets in Congress. That's one of the fundamental responsibilities, and if it's not going to be in regular order, I'm not going to support it.
So we're out of time, but why don't you make one more pitch? What do you say to mom and dad sitting at home around the kitchen table about you and why you should be in Congress?
Thanks for asking me that. And actually, I'll just say I'm Mike Kennedy. I'm running for Congress. I'm a family doctor. I'm an attorney. I'm a state legislator. I'm a father of 8 children, and I'm invested in the future of this state. I know that if we work together, we can build Utah into a better place, but the answers are not in Washington, D.C. I'm going to Washington, D.C. to make that place smaller and empower the people, not only of Utah, but also the whole country, so they can do what they know how to do best. That's take care of their families, build their small businesses, which I'm a small business owner, and promote the future so that 100 years from now, long after you and I are gone, that the place is better, not because we are great people, but because we did the right things at the right time so that everybody had a chance. So I'm Mike Kennedy. I would love to earn your support, and I'm running for Congress for CD3. That's John Curtis's seat currently that he's held, and I would be privileged to have your vote. Thank you very much.
Perfect. We'll see you guys next week.